All right. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody had a safe ride in. My name is Chris Irwin. I'm Vice Chair of Education, and I'm going to be a poor substitute for Will Wade and Matt Dubnik this morning, as they are both stuck in traffic and have communicated with me. I do anticipate both of those two showing up with us during this meeting. We have a sign up sheet. Let me make sure that everybody that wanted to sign up has seen it and signed up. If they have not, we will distribute it around for a minute. Great. Thank you. Let me see if I can call this subcommittee hearing to our meeting to order here, if I can. And let me begin with Representative Rich. Do you mind opening us in prayer?
Thank you. Bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing us all here safely together. And thank you for all of the people in this room who care about our children in the state. And Lord, we just pray that you will guide our discussions and our decisions here, and that the decisions that we make and the way that we conduct these proceedings will be pleasing to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I'll promise next time also to remember my umbrella. I have one in the car, and you know, you so often just get out, and so my run across from the office to here this morning was in the rain. So apologize for that. I believe we then you're up, Representative Bonner. I believe you, if you would, cover your number of your bill, LC number, and we'll get started.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the committee and the opportunity to present this bill. I'm working off of LC 490880-ECS.
Got it.
Okay. All right. And this, as you mentioned, this is House Bill 1178. It's titled the Parents' Bill of Rights. This is a part of Governor Kemp's agenda. And the bill is primarily about one thing, and that is transparency. It is a measure that it will encourage a greater partnership between our parents and our education community. What I'll do, Mr. Chairman, is I'll just kind of discuss it briefly, go through a few points, and then we'll open it up for any discussion and questions that the committee or any of the folks here may have.
Okay.
So the bill itself simply strengthens the parents' rights in law. Currently, most of these are done by board rule. These rules are easily undone, and the law is not. So this provides a framework for parents to get information as to what's being taught in the schools. It centralizes and streamlines that process, and then provides a framework if for some reason a particular school was not forthcoming that information. It does give the parents some recourse with the local board and then eventually with the state board of education. This codifies a parent's rights and the responsibility of the local system all in one place. Currently, all these rights and information are kind of all over the code, state regulations, and then local regulations. This will make it easier for districts and parents to understand the various roles. So the intent of the bill, as I mentioned, is that ultimately that parents have the right to direct the education and upbringing of their child. So what this does is provide that framework. A parent has the right under this law to request the instructional material that's being taught. It's the primary instructional materials, not the supplemental materials that often come up during the course of instruction. It says that a parent can make that request and that the school has a period of 3 days to provide that information. If they cannot provide it within that 3-day period, then they have to describe the information, and they have up to 30 days to provide the information. If the school fails to provide that, then the parent has recourse to petition the local board of education to get that information. Again, if for some reason that local board does not provide it, they have the option to appeal to the state board of education in order to get that information. It further allows parents to opt out of photography and videography of their child, and it also allows them to opt out of the sex education courses that are taught in the schools. With that, Mr. Chairman, that's essentially the framework of the bill. Again, the intent of the bill is to provide a level of transparency, and I will just start off with a general comment: is that the vast majority of our school systems currently adhere to these foundational principles. What this does is to get everybody across the state on the same page, and again, to encourage not only that transparency piece, but that partnership between our parents and our educators, which is so vital in educating our children. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Are there questions from members of the committee for the bill author? Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, you mentioned, I'm sorry, I was trying to go through the bill as you were talking, and was trying to match up what you were saying the bill does to where it says that in the bill. And so I may have been a bit distracted, but it sounded to me like you said there is a difference between primary instructional material and supplemental instructional material. Where is that in the bill?
Let's see. Yeah. So line 50, the right to review all instructional materials intended for the use of the classroom. And then does not. And what was your question?
Well, because as a former teacher, I know that as you have lesson plans that are planned out in advance, but if you are a good teacher, you're responding to what your classroom is learning or not picking up as you're going through and adapting. And so the specific instructional material that you may use is going to change from day to day. It may change hour to hour. And so I was listening to your comments. You said there is a difference between primary instructional material and then supplemental, which I thought was a good point. But in here on line 50, it says all instructional materials, and that gives me great concern.
So if you look on line 27, it defines instructional materials. And so that's defined by the Board of Education, locally approved instructional materials and content. So under those code sections, those code sections do not apply to supplemental materials. So this would still allow, a good example is, Russia invades the Ukraine. Let's talk about that, right? This would allow a teacher, current events teacher, whatever, to provide that news clip and have that conversation without having to, that would not fall into this category. It's not meant to add additional work to the teachers per se, but it simply just allows a framework for a parent to get that information, which is already being generated.
Okay. Representative Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along the same lines as what Representative Wilson mentioned, what does happen if an educator is teaching instructional materials that have been reviewed and it's just not working and they have to make adjustments to that particular material? Because part of what happens in a classroom, as Representative Wilson said, is students don't always learn the same way. And sometimes educators need the flexibility to readjust? Do they then have to resubmit what they're using?
If it is not a supplemental material, if it's something as an instructional material as defined under this bill, they would have to provide that if requested.
And I have a couple follow-up questions. As you've been working through this bill, have you had conversations with educators who feel that it would not increase the burden on what they're having to do already?
Yeah, I can only speak for my community. I represent folks in Fayette and Coweta counties, and the conversations that I've had with friends of mine that are educators, they welcome transparency because they know that transparency leads to trust, and then trust leads to greater parental involvement. And I think we can all agree that a lot of times some of our classrooms are simply overburdened, either with a number of students or, we've seen during the pandemic, that's certainly been an issue. So parents, in my experience, again, in my community, welcome more parental involvement. And so I think this is exactly what that does.
Can you walk me through just logistically how lines 104 and 105 work? So if a parent does object to instruction materials intended for use, then what happens next?
So they have the ability to object. That objection is certainly noted.
Mhm.
This bill does not provide any additional kind of recourse for a parent to change that material. Certainly, parents have options in terms of, possibly where they send their child and things like that. But this bill it's not meant to be punitive against the teachers. We're not looking to single out a specific teacher. We're not looking to single out a specific administrator or a school system for that matter. We're simply looking to provide a level of transparency. So it does give the parent the option to object to the materials, but the intent is that this bill will allow that conversation to take place. Because I think that if certainly as curriculum is developed, again, speaking in my community,
Mhm.
our school system does have various committees that involve parents as a part of those curriculum discussions and
Yeah.
book selections and things like that. So our intent with this is that would increase that effort across the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Irwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Floor Leader Bonner, tell me about your involvement of the stakeholders in writing this bill.
Sure. So as I mentioned, this is a part of Governor Kemp's one of his key agenda items. And so when the governor engaged a number of stakeholders to include superintendents, teachers, parents, organizations across the state, and really heard from them and worked through a number of these things. And again, I'll go back to that idea that this is not to be punitive in any way, but it is really meant to increase that level of transparency and that level of trust between our parents and our educational community. So without a doubt, there's certainly a number of measures that could be put in place that would, be more punitive or be in more of conflict with our education community. But this is an effort. This is a partnership effort as we see it.
Follow-up question, if I can. Do you feel this bill supports local control?
I do, because it does allow those local school systems to put these procedures in place and to monitor this. And again, it allows that opportunity for each of the local systems to engage our parents in a way that everyone has a common understanding of in that level of transparency.
Okay.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so for this bill, I was looking at the section code 20 of where a lot of this, what's in this bill is already included. And the existing code. And one thing just to clarify, in there, it does define the locally improved instructional materials and content. It says it constitutes the principal course of study for a state-funded course, not including supplementary or ancillary material, which is adopted by the local Board of Education or used by a local school system. So supplementary or ancillary material includes, but is not limited to, articles, online simulations, worksheets, novels, biographies, speeches, videos, music, or any similar resources in the medium, including both physical and digital. So just to clarify, this law only includes the primary instructional materials, not the ancillary, materials and yeah, I just want to confirm
That's
that.
correct. That's
Okay,
correct.
all right,
Yeah,
that's,
and thank you for that question. I will say that again, this is not meant to be punitive,
Right.
and we're certainly don't want to put something in place that is impossible to monitor. Right.
right,
My view of this is that if by making parents aware of this of the rights we all know currently exist and putting them in code, and allowing that transparency and allowing that framework, a lot of issues that folks have with what I'll just refer to as supplemental materials, a lot of those things will be addressed in my mind by that greater parental involvement, right?
Mhm.
So that the more that the teachers have an understanding of that child, their family background, where they're coming from, that may actually steer some of the supplemental materials in a way that is acceptable to everybody in the classroom.
great. Okay, may I have a follow-up? Okay, yeah. That's so it does, the teachers don't have to have every lesson plan ready, at the very beginning for this supplemental review. You're saying lesson plans are not included in this.
Well,
law.
they're whatever their primary curriculum
Mhm,
course of study, that is
Mhm.
falls under that, and that they have to have
mhm,
ready and available, I should
Mhm.
say. But it does not require, again, those supplemental materials that
mhm.
current events and things like that come up.
Right. And can we look just at the opt-out language for a minute? I want to just make sure I understand about that. So I think line 61 through 63, is that right? That's so to provide written notice, that's the opt-out language. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, because that is important that we have, I think there's been discussion about school bus safety and everything, they're like, we really need to be able to take, have photos of the students and everything. So we want to make it easier. So parents have to act, they have to opt out on
Yeah.
that.
Well, and even
Yeah.
if you look on line 6, starting on line 62, it's subject to applicable public safety and security exceptions. So,
Great. And then for the sex ed, that's lines 107, 108. If the parent provides a written objection, that's the opt-out language. Is
that's
that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, so that my only other comment would be is that just seems like a lot of these, I went through this and it seems like a lot of this information, line A, when you go lines 48 through 62, much of this is these records, D, the right to access all records, that's already in our current law in section 20. And the right E, that's in our current law. And 64 is already, line 64 to 60, many of this stuff is already in our current law. So I would just ask why we need to repeat it.
Well, so some are not. Some are simply, via board rules. Some are federal requirements, like, whether it's HIPAA or the FERPA, the Federal Education Protection Act, things like that. So some of these things are kind of a cross code. What this does is kind of put everything in one place for, again, to get everybody on the same page you can't, in that we're creating a specific framework for the request and the kind of appeal process. We felt it was important to pull everything together as a whole, so that when you refer to this bill, it's almost like a one-stop shop for, okay, here are the rights as laid out in law, and these are the procedures for requesting the information.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, and I apologize for my tardiness. Traffic was fun. In the rain, no doubt, as you can see. Picked a great day not to have my umbrella as well. All right, I'm going to call on Chairman Dubnik real quick. Do you know number 7? All right, I think you've got it. All right, I'm live. Representative Bonner, thank you for bringing this, and
if I could, I've heard the word transparency used a lot this morning. I see a lot of transparency here. As a parent, I believe in transparency, but a couple of just analogies, if I could. You and I have talked before about my child who has severe food allergies, correct?
Yes.
It's transparency when the FDA says that we have to put ingredients on the label of a food so that I can make sure that my child stays at home and not in the emergency room. I mean, wouldn't you agree that
Absolutely.
that providing citizens of the United States with access to know what's in the food we eat is a form of transparency? Would you agree that when we go to the doctor that we have access to our own healthcare records and can be advocates for ourselves, and at any time we can find out what's in those healthcare records and what medicines are being put in our body? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And would you think that food and healthcare and education are probably the three most primary areas in our life where we need transparency, and that should be encouraged and enhanced?
Absolutely.
So again, I really want to commend you for this, and to Representative Evans, to your point, I'm still learning this process as well when we talk about legislation, but I know when we work with legislative counsel a lot, we talk about needing to refer to other code sections to either have a definition there, have reference there. So I'm certainly not a lawyer, as my colleagues to my left here are, nor am I trying to speak for the bill author, but I know that as a chairman, I get counseled a lot on when working with legislative counsel and why things need to be there. So I appreciate that as well. But Representative Bonner, again, on behalf of me as a parent and transparency in our school systems, I certainly appreciate this. And thank you, Chairman Wade. I know we've got a lot of people that want to speak to the bill.
No problem. I appreciate that, Chairman Dudley. We've got two committee members, or at least one committee member, and I think we have a member that is here that I'm going to allow to ask a question. But I do want to let the folks know we have, looks like 15 folks signed up to speak. And we do have a very tight committee schedule, and a lot of members have other committee meetings. So I'm going to make sure that every person that has signed up to speak is allowed to speak. But because there are so many here to speak, you're going to be limited to about a minute and a half. So, and what I would say is many of you are in favor and many of you may not be in favor of the bill. If someone gets up and says exactly what you plan to say, govern yourselves accordingly. But if you have a separate point that you would like to share, I would just so that we can make sure that every person has an opportunity to speak. So quickly, I'm going to go to number 13. Is that Representative Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I'm surely you would agree with me that part of our job here is not only to consider the bill language in front of us, but also to think through what comes next. What is the practical impact of this? My question for you is, this identifies a ability of parents to object to instructional materials. And I worry that word is very vague in this bill, and there is no process laid out for what that objection, what the consequence of that objection would be. And my concern is some school districts may feel they need to put in place a policy where if one parent objects to a classroom teaching material over slavery, for example, or Ahmaud Arbery or evolution, that then because of that one objection, the entire classroom is then denied the opportunity to cover that. How do you respond to that?
Well, I would say that parents have the right now to object. I mean, I don't know if you've been to a school board meeting lately, but during kind of the height of the pandemic, we had over 300 parents show up to one of our school board meetings, which is unheard of, right? So and it's been consistent throughout the not only the pandemic, but even as we've started to wane down on that, school board meetings across the state, as far as I can see, have had an increase in folks showing up, people in the community, parents, things like that. So they already have that ability to object. And, we certainly, we did try to find that balance between, what the state is kind of mandating and putting in place and what our local school boards still have the ability to do. So, but again, there may be other pieces of legislation that take those things further and provide additional venues and recourse. This bill just does not.
I do agree with you that we should read this bill in context with the other bills that are coming before this committee. Thank you.
Well, I'm only here to present this one, so I appreciate your consideration on this one.
I appreciate that, Representative Wilson. And at this time, just want to let you have one final opportunity to say a few comments. So we don't have any other questions from committee members. Do you have anything you'd like to share with the committee prior to me opening this up for public comment?
Well, again, I just appreciate the opportunity to present, and I will just reiterate that this bill is simply about transparency, and I believe that is a great foundation to put out there, and that truly will increase the level of trust that we have between our communities, our parents, and our educators. So that's the intent of the bill, and I would appreciate any your consideration on that.
All right, I appreciate that very much, Representative Bonner. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that may be probably the best. So what I will do is, we're in a tight room. Thank you for understanding. Let's do this. There is at the very end of this, I think that'll be fine. And then I'm assuming there's one at the end of this one. So I guess depending on your proximity in the room, if you'll choose which mic best suits you. And I'm going to announce the first four speakers so that you can kind of be prepared. The first is going to be Andrea Young, then Lisa Morgan, then Mary Clausen, and then Lori Simonelli. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. Thank you very much. And so first we'll come up with Andrea Young. And let me see what number. Okay, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Andrea Young, Executive Director of the ACLU of Georgia and a graduate of Atlanta Public Schools. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. We need to help our kids catch up after a year of school disrupted by the pandemic and not turn our schools into battlegrounds. Parents and teachers together have had an overwhelming task last year, and it's still going on, trying to make remote learning work. And today teachers are struggling mightily to help our kids get back on track. But on top of extra long days and overloaded classrooms, they're now having to deal with angry parents who want to argue about masks, vaccines, theories of race, when most are just trying to teach basic skills in reading, writing, math, and science. We're concerned that the allowing parents to object to classroom material content contributes to a climate of classroom censorship, that the review period will burden teachers who are already incredibly burdened by all of the responsibilities I just named, that the bill has vague language, again, as we've heard, allows parents to object without really detailing any kind of standard or process. And that also, as we've heard, that this bill is really unnecessary because so many of these parental rights are already involved in statute and also protected by the Supreme Court. And of course, as ACLU, we're very supportive of the rights of parents. And so I just ask you to remember who our teachers are. They're our friends, our neighbors, our brothers, sisters, cousins.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a Zach Brown fan.
And they, and every teacher I've ever known, including my mother, grandmother, sister, have only wanted parents to be as engaged as possible.
Ms. Young,
and be as transparent as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you speaking. Next up, Lisa Morgan. And again, I'm not trying to cut people short, but we have a lot of folks that have signed up to speak. So try to keep that to a minute and a half. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Lisa Morgan, a 23-year veteran public school educator. I'm a kindergarten teacher and the current president of the Georgia Association of Educators. And first, I would like to say educators feel attacked this session. We have been begging over the years for parental involvement. And this bill, while you say it's transparency, the first step is to file a complaint. This is information that's already available. I would suggest first, are we looking in our child's book bag every day rather than filing a complaint? Are we sending a note to the teacher? Are we picking up the phone or an email to the teacher? This, rather than ensuring a partnership between educators, simply by introducing it as a complaint, we are actually driving a wedge between that most important partnership between parents and educators. This is turning that relationship adversarial because the first word is the parent can file a complaint rather than the parent can request. The parent can file a complaint. That makes it adversarial. And educators feel attacked in this situation. Why aren't we discussing the real issues? Because as has been stated here, most of this information is readily available to parents and much simpler than a complaint. Thank you.
Thank you. And the bill sponsor would like to just give you a quick response, and I'm going to allow that.
Yeah, I thank you for your comments. I would point out that you say it's the first recourse is a complaint. That the first recourse on line 64 is the right to request. So it is a request, not a complaint. There is, I don't see the word complaint in the bill. It does provide a framework for if for some reason that the particular school does not provide the information, it provides recourse for the local board and then the state board, but nowhere in here does it say complaint.
I will come back to you after the public comment. That's okay, since about line 64. All right, very quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that not, Representative Bonner, is that not in relation to the opt-out provision for the photographs, though, not the instructional material?
I'm sorry. The right to, we have the right to access, the right to request. I don't see where the very first part of the procedure is a complaint. The first part of the procedure is to request the information.
All right, thank you very much. All right, thank you, Lisa. Next up is Mary Clausen. All right, and again, forgive me for the short time, but a minute and a half. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Clausen. I am a mother, a nurse, and a Fulton County resident. My daughters were in Fulton County Public Schools for 9 years. They went to a public middle school, which had ancillary supplemental materials and promotion of clubs in the school that were not available to the parents to the material that was being taught. So I'm asking that the parental bill of rights include supplemental and ancillary class materials and a procedure for parents to learn about clubs or social activism information that includes videos and posters ahead of time. When the schools show these videos and encourage activism and sexual exploration, parents need to be notified and allowed to choose whether or not their children are exposed to these themes, materials, and issues. I pulled my children out of Fulton County schools in 2018 because of sexual information rampant throughout the school and classroom activities that were scheduled, and my children were not notified. There's no notice ahead of time like it's supposed to be for sexual education. There was a poster in the school that showed polyamory sexual orientation to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. These are 10-year-old kids, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, to encourage them to go to an LGBT club. I have friends that are same-sex oriented that I go on vacation with that have to ask for dinner. This is not an anti-LGBT thing. It is age-appropriate information that teachers think are age-appropriate and principals think that the parents do not. The words that were in the school plastered all over. A periodic table of pride was on the wall that every kid walked by. There was no regular periodic table of contents. There was The
Thank
words
you.
were,
Thank you very much for your comments. And I'm sure that if you'd like to your first question that I heard you about the supplemental material, I'm sure that at an appropriate time, the sponsor of the bill would be happy to listen to the concern that you have. So
Bill
just,
1158 has that outlined. If that could be put
okay.
into this bill, that would be perfect.
okay, thank you very much. All right. Next up we have is Lori Simonelli. And then just to let folks know, we've got Carrie Lukey, Rhonda Thomas, and Noel Cashin up after that. So
Boy, I really sunk down in this chair. I guess it makes you comfortable.
Nice and
after
comfortable.
Sitting all day, yeah.
yes. All
Good
right, thank you.
morning. So I would like for you to amend certain things to the bill. I would like, instead of opt out, opt in. And I'll tell you why, because we all know that children have peer influence. So if everybody in their class is doing something and mom and dad have opted out once, there's no guarantee they're going to give it to us. Do you know? So I think if we have to opt in for anything, that makes sense. And it gives more an added layer of protection. Also, if you could add any biometric used, any biometric data used, because technology is moving that way, you know, and they're doing face recognition and fingerprints. These are minor children. So just a simple add that cannot be done without parent knowledge and written consent. Also, I'd like the right to any medical procedure. You say that HIPAA and FERPA, those are federal laws and they're good. But I'm from Gwinnett and Forsyth, and we're already got schools popping up with COVID vaccine clinics. And I don't know what the next step will be. There's been stories across the nation where kids got a flu mistake because them being there that day was consent. So if you could please add wording on matters like that, so we did have more control medically.
Thank you very much for your time.
And
your
one more thing, the supplements have to be added. I am in Forsyth and Gwinnett, and the pornography that I'm not allowed to read at a board meeting is in our libraries because it's supplemental.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Miss Carrie Lukey. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. All right. Thank you.
I'm a parent here in Cherokee County, and I just wanted to put in my support for this bill. I appreciate everyone's efforts to try to provide transparency to parents in the school system. I, however, would like to make the point that, especially when your children get into like high school levels, primary materials and textbooks, that's really what primary materials are, is a textbook. Kids don't really use those anymore. My kids come home with these textbooks and they sit in their rooms and they never open them up. Pretty much everything is done online now and would be considered a supplementary material. And I just want to say, if you don't include supplementary materials in this bill, the transparency level isn't that high. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next up we have Rhonda Thomas.
Good morning, and
Thank
thank you for having me. Two things right up. Thank you for putting all our Bill of Rights in one place so that we don't have to go searching for them. That's a positive thing. The other thing is we love our teachers. We are stressing some teachers, but let me tell you, there are a lot of teachers in our schools that are stressed out because of what they're having to do and the guilt they're feeling that the parents don't know they're doing it. So we praise our teachers. This is not about harming our teachers or bringing more on our teachers. So when I was here last week for another bill, all I heard was parents are paranoid. One parent can disrupt everything. And that parents can cause division between students and teachers. That right there puts concern on me, and why it's so important that we have transparency, because what that tells me is our administration is not looking at parental rights. They're looking at child's rights. So we need transparency in our schools. That needs to include supplemental material, because as the last lady just said, we don't have books. So that primary material, we're not really going to be able to review anything. So we do need to be able to, I don't know why I'm so nervous, but review all the material, including supplemental material, because what we have seen is that everything that's coming into the schools is through supplemental material. Everything is online. So sex ed, I just watched a video. And again, as Mary said, we are not anti-LGBTQ, but this was a transgender teaching safe sex to elementary students. So
Thank you for your
parents
presence.
need the right to opt in.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you very much. All right, next up we have Noel Cahan. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Very few people do, but that's okay. Noel Cahan with Protect Student Health Georgia.
All right.
We're a grassroots organization who is very involved with parental rights and the protection and innocence of our children. So we parents and teachers, thank you for this bill. It's very important to codify our parental rights into state code. However, we can do much better, and many states, including our southern neighbor, has codified at least a dozen parental rights, and this bill only has 6. As a substitute teacher, I use lesson plans and materials that are pre-planned, and even movies and video clips are pre-planned, and I'm able to use those right from the teacher's instructions. So this is not difficult or burdensome to teachers. 2-week lead time to allow parents to review is the least that our taxpayer dollars deserve. Specifically, the right to consent to DNA before it is created, stored, or shared is very important. This we have an example in Coweta County in an English class that this was not in the instructional materials. It was not in textbooks. The teacher collected fingerprints, blood type, and hair samples of the children, and the children went along willingly with it. They didn't know any better until one parent found out about it, and she even had to get an attorney, and I'll provide that information to the committee. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Next up, we have, I'm going to do my best, Kesha Frillo. Keisha, I apologize.
Good morning. I'm here to support the bill. I feel the transparency is important. Parents have a right to know what the schools is teaching their kids. This is not an attack on teachers, but it seems like today many teachers are activists pushing ideology, going as far as to say not to tell their parents what they're being taught. The only people who have something to hide are people who have bad intentions. I believe they should stick to the core courses instead of teaching stuff that will cause division and confusion in the children. That's all.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Helped us catch up on our time too, so thank you. Next up, we have Christy McCraney. Good morning.
A parent's Bill of Rights is necessary because schools are teaching controversial material. I'm the mom of 5 kids. 2 of them are still school age, and I have way too many examples of controversial material to share here. But I can tell you, I've gone to the teachers, the vice principals, the principals. I've shared my concerns with Dr. Looney, my superintendent, and I've been one of those 300 at the board meetings. And now I'm here. I need a parent's Bill of Rights. I've followed really good procedure in Fulton County to get rid of objectionable material. I've tried to be the person who goes in there and just shakes it all up. It doesn't work. No one person has that power. I couldn't get rid of an objectionable book in my school. And while I disagreed with their decision to keep it, the process made total sense. I followed the process. They made their decisions. We were at a conclusion. I'm here now asking you to give me the authority to make decisions on behalf of my kids regarding their education, their indoctrination, and even the collection of their personal information by the state. I'm a mom of 5. I'm busy. I'm down here at 9. I'll be back at 10 because I need a parent's Bill of Rights. The process hasn't worked for me. We need more help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Lauren Bashat. All right. Thank you very much.
Hi. Thank you for your support for parents' rights. As I understand it, there are currently 3 bills addressing parents' rights, HB 1158, 1178, and State Bill 449. Each of these bills provides for the protection of the fundamental rights of parents to direct the upbringing and education of their minor children. However, only HB 1158 includes healthcare decisions, and I would like to ask you to include the healthcare lines in this bill. Those would be lines 22 to 25, 54 to 64. I won't read them all out, and lines 156 to 157. And to please include the infringement of parental rights. The state and any of its political subdivisions, any other government entity, or any other institution may not infringe on the fundamental rights of a parent to direct the upbringing, education, healthcare, and mental health of his or her minor child without demonstrating that such action is reasonable and necessary to achieve a compelling state interest, and that such action is narrowly tailored and is not otherwise served by less restrictive means. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Amy Noel. Ohio. Morning.
Good morning. Sorry, traffic's rough today.
Amen.
Okay. This is for parents' rights, right?
This is for the Parent Bill of Rights. Yes.
Sorry, I'm testifying wherever I can.
You're
Nobody
fine.
listens,
Thank
and they
you.
call me down here 10 times and then I never speak. So
Come on. You're allowed to speak. Go ahead.
thank you so much. Let me just find the right one. Okay, this is from one of our friends in Floyd County who couldn't be here today. This is about her daughter. That's not it. Sorry about that. I'll find it.
Noel, if you want to, if you're in the room, go ahead and come to the next table too, if you don't mind. We've got a very tight schedule for some other
Here it
committees. So,
goes. Sorry about that.
all right.
On Wednesday, August 25th, 2021, over dinner, my 14-year-old daughter, who is currently in 9th grade at Coosa High School, informed me that her class was reading the children's book, 3 Little Pigs. That's not it either. You know what? Do you want to go to the next person?
Let's do that while you prepare. Okay. I think you actually have already signed up twice, so that's fine. Good. Cecile Harshek. All right. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Good morning.
Mask off. So good morning. My name is Cecily Harsh-Kanane. I'm here from Public Education Matters Action Fund, Public Education Matters Georgia Action Fund. So I would just start by saying, why is this legislation needed? Are parental rights in fact being usurped by schools? Are there currently laws that undercut the role of parents in decision-making regarding their children? The answer to these questions is an emphatic no. I'm all for transparency. I think schools do a pretty good job of transparency. We need it more in other places probably, but they, in fact, there are numerous laws and regulations that guarantee these very rights. As Representative Evans already pointed out, that a lot of this is in law, it's all in code and so on. So at its core, this is an attack. Why are we doing this? This is an attack on teachers and administration. What this legislation says, without saying it outright, is that we don't trust the experts in the field and that parents should usurp their positions. Giving parents a fundamental right to direct the education of their children raises the specter of schools forced to contend with a variety of parental demands on curriculum, discipline, and teaching methods.
Thank you very
And the
much.
related possibility of
Thank you.
numerous lawsuits brought by that's it.
That's it. I appreciate your thoughts.
I do believe schools and parents do need to cooperate, but I do think we do a good job of doing that already.
Thank you.
And as Ms. Morgan
All right.
said, we can, increase it. This law does not do this, does
All
not
right.
provide the means.
Thank you very much.
Support that. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
You have 1 minute. That's all I've got time for. Okay.
It's up to you what you want to hear. On Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021, my 14-year-old daughter called to inform me that for the past week, she had been enduring sexual harassment from a fellow student. This particular student is the son of a teacher at her high school, which is Coosa High School in Floyd County. When I asked why she waited to tell me, she stated that several staff members had approached her about the situation and she thought it was being dealt with. Instead, by dealing with it, teachers took my minor daughter alone into their office to discuss the matter. The vice principal met with my daughter in a supply closet and stated that if Lucy did not want to tell me, she could talk to her instead, even giving her email addresses as a contact. Immediately, I called the school requesting to speak with the vice principal. She stated that she had every intention of calling me that evening after her personal tennis match was over. She apologized as if she overstepped her bounds by offering Lucy to talk to her rather than myself. When I asked her to explain the situation, what it was exactly that made the student, what they said to my daughter, she stated that I needed to ask my daughter. She had a legal obligation to the male student. I mean, this is about sexual harassment and the parent wasn't informed. So it's up to you if you want to cut the time. It's totally your time.
It's not a matter of wanting to cut your time. It's a matter, there's a lot of folks that spoke to the bill, but this is my suggestion. You have a very specific incident. Please share that with the bill sponsor. He will, I'm sure, consider that. And I think that I've heard and I understand where you're going with what happened in that situation. I'm very sympathetic to it. But I think at this time, because we have a full committee day for other committees, back-to-back members are here now. I've got to turn back that time, but I do appreciate your comments very much.
I appreciate that
thank
as
you
well.
for being
But
here.
parents come down here 4 times, never get to testify, and then they get a minute and you tell us to go see someone else. And that's exhausting. frustrating.
He's right here. I'm not telling you to go see someone else, but I appreciate your comments. All right, at this time, due to the time and the hour, I'd like to ask the committee if at this time anyone would like to make any questions or comments. Yes, sir. Chairman Dubin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
All right, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I move that House Bill 1178 do pass.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to amend.
You're not recognized at this time, okay? We've got a motion on the floor for a do pass. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
All right, so let's raise our hands for aye. Make sure we have it clear. Aye. And for a no. All right, I believe that is 4-3. The motion carries. This bill will pass. It will now move to the full education committee. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for being here.